In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking, with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners. Yo, 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 ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Case Closed, coming to you Sunday, every Sunday, that is 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And as usual, we got a nice, very, very nice, juicy, spicy, and topical topic for you today. Well, go ahead and click that like button, click the subscribe button if you've not already, notification bell, all that good stuff. Okay, share the stream because today we're talking about the, as the topic says, the whom is winning, whom is losing. Is everybody losing in the modern day sex games? Modern dating and relationships have been highly deregulated. Okay, that is the transition from more regulated communal values based situation to more, shall we say, technology and government policies liberating people is one way to put it. And as a result, things are becoming more individualistic. And we're looking at the board and we're saying, oh, what are the effects in terms of groups and individuals? What are the trade-offs? Whom is coming out on top? Whom is not coming out on top? But let me start the question. Let me start this by the way, LAR, you good over there? I think
we shall see.
We shall see indeed. So, Dr. Thunder, let's start like this. What will be the reason? What is a good reason for talking about who is winning or who is losing? And let me make it antagonistic. Other than saying playing team sports, like, oh, I'm not losing, you're losing, or doing nah, that person's losing, or making sure that you're not in the team that's losing. Other than team sports, politics, social BS, what will be the reason of looking and saying this person is winning, that person is losing in terms of groups and blah, blah, blah? What do you think?
To more correctly and accurately perceive the nature of reality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not winning and losing in this context have more to do with the relative benefits of winning, the relative consequences of losing, and we want everyone to win, especially Generation X folks like myself, who feel very much conflicted about several things related to the Black community. Should we let it burn, or should
you guys feel guilty in a certain sense as well, or no?
Yeah, I mean, let it burn, or should it be, or is there something that we can do to fix this? Or, honestly, these who's winning and who's losing discussions, though it may be framed in a way to seem as though it's a pointing finger in the face, rather, actually, I think in many cases, in my desire to discuss this topic, is about, well, what things are working, therefore causing you to win, and what things are not working, therefore causing you to lose. And is it possible to borrow some of the strategies of the winning team, that sort of thing. So I think in my mind, that's the reason for identifying winners and losers, is because you want to be part of the winning team. And how can you do that?
Okay, so you want to be part of the winning team. How can you do that? As opposed to, go ahead.
It may also be to criticize the game. That could also be a reason, so that it's not the players in the game, it's the game. Mm-hmm. It's rigged. You've been told this, you've been sold this bill of goods. It turns out that this is false, and this is why you're losing, is because you don't understand the rules accurately, or you bought rules that were wrong, whatever.
Yeah. The very first words out of your mouth was to accurately perceive the nature of reality. And that is basically the highest standard that you have set for yourself in terms of what everything else you've said falls underneath that, right? That, to accurately represent the nature of the game. Maybe you're critiquing the game. Maybe you're looking at the game to see, well, I'm going to play this game. I'm in the modern day. So how do I facilitate the outcomes that I want? And you're talking about, in this case, using a scalpel, right? To look at things and dissect things You're not necessarily playing politics. Not putting words in your mouth, but you're saying not necessarily playing politics, not coming in with sledgehammer, pointing fingers and all that kind of stuff. You're looking at things in that way. Okay, so LAR, the same question, right? What in your mind would be a legitimate reason for talking about who's winning, who's losing? Is it part of what Obsidian calls "whoop that trick" voyeurism? Like everyone tunes into Kevin Samuels to watch whoop that trick, right? So what's going on from your perspective here? Legitimate reasons for kind of looking at things in this way, and illegitimate reasons. What do you think?
First off, shout out to Terrence Howard and Hustle and Flow, man, for the nice song. So the first thing is it could be a wash, but truth be told, we don't know who's playing and who's not. So we're kind of keeping score because there are people out here who are literally playing games, and there are people out here who are really trying not to play games, but they're surrounded by people who are playing games. So now it's like, who's winning and who's losing, because some people are playing long game and some people are playing the short game and some people are not playing at all. I know I'm all over the place philosophical, but what I'm saying at the end of the day is now people have to separate themselves by who's playing and who's not. And in order to do that, you got to identify who's playing and who's not. And if they want to play, let them play. And if they are winning and losing, say you're winning and losing. And then other people say, I wasn't playing to begin with. So, go over there, because what I've seen over the years is, and it's unfortunate to say it this way, there's a bunch of adults who like playing until they get their butt kicked by life, and then they say, I quit. And then it's like, no, you got to stay over there because your reputation precedes you. So that's just my thoughts on it.
So, Dr. K, first of all, I think that what LAR said, one of the things that can be abstracted from what LAR said is this individualized nature of things now. Meaning there's choice. The people who choose to play, people who don't choose to play, people who play in a silly way, get their ass kicked, and now they want to change teams, whatever it may be, right? But the individuation, or shall I say the more individualistic,
soft right? Girls.
There you go. The more individualistic aspect, and granted, these people maybe, because individualistic doesn't mean that this person is intrinsically motivated, that they know what they want, that they're individuated. In other words, you can have an individualistic world where people are just copying each other, right? It's like they're just drones copying each other, right? Which is what's going on most of the time. So I think LAR's point is kind of mentioned that part. Like people are, anyways. Dr. K, you've heard what Dr. Thunder said, heard what LAR said. One thing that Dr. Thunder said was about the Black community, right? He mentioned that. And perhaps you can then elaborate upon that in the sense that this is about modernity, even though it is going to be equally, shall we say, represented in different communities. Some communities may be at the tip of the spear of modernity in terms of the visible effects, whatever it may be, right? But that this is kind of like everywhere. So part of what Dr. Thunder said about what can be done, it's almost like one of the things that one may immediately recognize is that, okay, this is not about a particular community, that the landscape has changed everywhere. And as a result, what can be done is not going to be to shift the landscape back. Like you're going to need to play within the new chessboard, but how do you reorient yourself, blah, blah, blah. These are just thoughts. But the question is still on the table for Dr. K to address, which is what could be the legitimate reasons besides pointing fingers, playing politics, and not wanting to be in the losing team. Dr. Thunder said, hey, you may be looking at the chessboard so that you can say, if I'm going to play this game, how do I win? The wrong way to do it is to you already know the team you're in and then start saying that your team is winning, as opposed to really actually looking at the chessboard. That's a lot I've said there, but what are your initial thoughts here, Dr. K?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think some people in the chat, just to sort of clarify to them what the whole discussion is about as well. Who's winning? What do we mean by winning, first of all? Right? I think it's good to actually address that. And from my analysis, right, the winning comes in different areas. There's individual winning, and that's basically me. Am I able to get what I want? If is it peace leave? Do you want to get monkey door backflips every Friday? TGI Fridays, right? Thank God it's Friday moment. So is winning also to do with my mental health? Because right now, here's where you look into the cultural aspect, okay? So men suffer from more suicide, successful suicide. Is it because women are just less competent, that they can't kill themselves properly, or is it that something with us leaves modernity leaves men in a dissatisfied function? So are men losing in modernity? Can you use a smaller statistical distribution of these men within that suicide sector to describe a whole region of men, right? And also when we represent ourselves in the media, when you talk about all these events, I just saw a video by Kidology. I don't know if you know, I'm going to respond on my Black Manosphere channel later on today, but she's trying to seem like she's empathetic, but you can kind of see that social game that she's playing also, where ultimately she's kind of saying, well, these Black Manosphere people, they have a point, but then they're also missing this, and this. So it's almost like a pseudo or not a complete empathy. So she wants you to join this more sort of we are all human box, but still she's sort of not quite understanding us. So there's all those levels, and I would like to say, look, when it comes to individual, I'm winning, obviously. When it comes to the cultural, now that's yet to be decided.
Okay, so, and that is part of the reason for the title, okay, Everyone Loses, is to say that community loses. Dr. K just brought us into this, but let's go around the panel with, do we agree with this? Basically, I'm saying that as a result of the modern deregulation and individualistic place that we're in, where technology and government has kind of liberated people to kind of do what they want, again, doesn't mean that they're now sophisticated beings. It's not about that. It's just they're liberated to do what they want. Hence, community values, duty, responsibility, family, those types of things where people are making sense based on what is being collectively agreed upon, that overall gets lost. So that's kind of like number one. And I think it's not such a hard thing for us to agree on. So therefore, I'm going to add. So number one, community loses, right? Overall. Number two, individuals also lose, because only Dr. K like people are gonna win. These are people who perhaps even thrive.
You see, that Dusty Philosopher saying sex isn't everything. All the incels, you can see the incel talking points over there, right? They're trying to disparage my winning by saying that I'm not really happy, and success is other thing. No, success is, like I said, monkey double back at my own discretion.
Yeah, that silly thing people do, like, well, define winning. We're not going to define winning, not in this case, because it's, come on, it's like, it's a silly little, this is not the, come on. I'm not going to run into that cul-de-sac. So Dr. Thunder, beginning with you, number one, community loses, right? Because we're going to individual. It's just like a truism, a statement saying, okay, we're going from more community-based to individual-based. So the community kind of sense-making, the community meaning finding is gonna lose. And then number two, because things have now become down to the individuals, only a small percentage of individuals will win, because that's just how the game works. Any game being played, you're gonna have the outliers over here winning, and a lot of people are just living the average miserable lives. Because again, most people would otherwise get their meaning, their sense making, their happiness from what community, the duties, responsibilities, and so on and so forth that community defines. Anyways, I'm saying too much, perhaps, Dr. Thunder, but what do you say about that? Number one, community is losing, and then number two, most individuals will lose along because they can't be quote unquote individuated individuals by definition.
Yeah, of course, I agree with that. Maybe some context for our discussion too. I did I did one of my impromptu videos earlier last week, I should say, because Sunday is the first day of the next week. So it was last week, and in the name of the video was our hoes really winning, and it was a sort of an analysis or a look at the difference between Ramil's perspective of hoes are winning and CGA's perspective of hoes are not winning, right? And so that was an interesting sort of conversation, video performed pretty well. And this past Thursday, I had Edward Anderson on Thunder's Thoughts, and we talked on the topic, our, what was the topic? It was, it was pump and dump versus abstinence. What's better for black men? What's better for black men, right? And that was an interesting conversation. We were not necessarily trying to answer the question, really. We were talking positive points on the so-called pump and dump side, positive points on the abstinence side. And even when you start considering stuff like monk mode is at least a temporary abstinence, right? And of course, abstinence is not to mean permanent abstinence. It's to mean temporary abstinence. It's to mean don't waste your time with something that's not worth it, right? So that kind of thing. Now, the reason that I said something about the black community when you gave me when I spoke initially on here is because in the black community, it's the easiest to tell how a lot of this, modernity is affecting people, because when white folks get the cold, we get the flu, right? So it is exacerbated. The effects of the deregulated dating market, as it were, are plain to see. They are plain and clear to see. And the fact is that to the extent that the white society continues to embrace the dysfunction in the black community, i.e., more fathers alienated from their children's lives, X, Y, and Z. To the extent that happens at a greater clip, the white community will become like the black community. That is the single issue. The reason all that stuff is important, and the reason that discussing winning and losing, and the fact that when our family structures are not intact, that everybody loses, even the individual loses, right? And unless you are somebody like Dr. K or like myself, that it's whatever happens in the world is not really going to impact me that much. I'm already married. I don't see that changing. But for future generations, we're going to end up in hot water. So I agree with your points earlier. I wanted to provide some context so that we could kind of continue to open this discussion up a bit. Why are we even interested in, who's winning? Why does it matter who's winning? And in particular, what is meant by winning and losing? Not getting down to specific definitions, rather, of what it means to win or what it means to lose, but at least the context for the conversation. So, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And let me put some at least context on the winning and losing aspect that you just touched upon there. So when it comes to what I call, sense making or finding meaning, most people will find it extrinsically in terms of what the community has defined to be their roles, duties, and responsibilities. Hence, their reasons for having meaning and, shall we say, for being appreciated, right? For being a good man or good woman or a worthwhile person will be, shall we say, sought or typically gotten from some kind of community-based value system, right? People look to that. So a loss in that is it could be defined as a loss, right? In other words, just it is gone. Now it's going to be more individualistic. So when I say the community loses, that, for example, is what I mean by the community losing, in the sense that that thing is no longer there. Now, most individuals whom were dependent on that are also not going to have that means of guidance. So that is in a way a kind of a loss. It's not a loss for the individual, such as you said, you or Dr. K or whatever. because I suspect that in both ways, in both situations, you know, it wasn't. Then you guys are not necessarily going to be so swayed by, shall we say, community derived.
Well, we're not
need.
average. The real thing is we're not average.
Oh, yes, yeah. So
So
you're not
the
average.
thing
So
is,
the average person, however, is going to
it's
feel
screwed.
that. Yeah.
Oh, the
And
average person
then-
is screwed.
And then you too, even if you don't feel it, the non-average person doesn't feel it, you can still then just say, okay, from a communitarian perspective, like I'm just now looking big picture communitarian wise and saying, this is these were the particular outcomes. This is what people say they want. I think it's gonna be more difficult for them to get it. People want meaning. I think it's gonna be harder for them to get it if without this kind of community values, you know, it's the average person, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, LAR. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I've not seen a super chat yet. I don't know, Dr. Thunder or Dr. K, you guys seen a super chat? No, I don't think so. But
No,
yes, so
y'all need
you're ready
to
for
have a
the
question.
reach in your wallet.
super chats, and then I'll drop the link.
Why are there so many incels in the chat? So there is Dusty, there is Checo something, there's John Zola. The reason I say okay, they're volcels, right? And let me be honest. I used to be an incel once. They kicked me out because I had a previous relationship, so they banned me for bragging, right? And the bragging was talking about my ex, right? This is crazy. These people kicked me out, anyways. So there's a lot of volcels. Now the whole aspect of volcel for me, I don't respect it unless you're becoming a volcel for some spiritual reason. And I mean like a truly spiritual reason, not just telling yourself, I don't need monkey double backflips just to feel a sense of control. That doesn't count for me. If you're going to be a volcel, do it for spiritual reasons. Okay, I want to be like Christ, right? I want to ignore Mary Magdalene's going on my feet and all that stuff, you know, with all my crazy foot fetish. Fair enough. But if you're just a volcel because the market isn't opening towards you and then you want to make yourself feel better, I can't respect that.
All right, LAR.
I don't know. I think Magdalene was probably foldable.
Okay.
Blasphemous.
I'm sorry. I had to say
if we go to
something
hell,
CGA
at least
related.
if we go to hell, at least we'll still be we'll still be able to talk about it.
Oh goodness.
LAR. Okay. Any kind of reactions based on what you've heard so far? Dr. Thunder is talking about the idea of what exactly does this winning and losing look like, right? So I mentioned if people are not going to be able to get their sense making, their meaning making, and their quote unquote happiness, that thing which they never get, right? Which you know, they never get it.
You say people are seeking happiness? No. That's some modernity stuff. We don't want happiness. Okay, no thanks.
Yeah, no happiness. But how about his? Okay, maybe no. Okay, not his. Okay, but anyways, LAR. All right, you go ahead. You got the floor. You got the mic.
If I'm gonna try to be as pessimistically positive as I can be, people don't want to win anyway. People want to have a struggle story. Because winning takes discipline. Winning takes doing things that you don't want to do. Winning takes, understanding momentum. Winning takes having to change something that might not actually be what you feel like doing at the moment, but what actually works at the moment. So when it comes to winning, a lot of people, that's not their thing. A lot of people want to win at, I want to do what I want to do. Damn the consequences. And unfortunately, what winds up happening is when I want to do what I want to do becomes a loss, then it becomes, I want to attach myself to somebody who's winning, and hopefully they win big enough that I can still do what I want to do and my losses don't count to them. So, that's why in essence, nobody really wins, because you can't get a winner with a winner, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a winner with a loser who's leeching off of a winner. That's why it's so difficult to have quote unquote productive relationships. Because if you really want to win, your partner's going to have to hold you, hey, You're not doing that. That you lost at that 5 times in a row. I don't care how you feel now. But we need to have the freedom to F up. And that becomes a problem with quote unquote winning. So, that's all I have to say about that as in Forrest Gump logic.
Indeed, indeed. And we have some people in the chat here whom are at least recognizing this, the outlier, the non-average person is going to do well. LAR's point, what it kind of brings to mind here is that whether it be in a situation such as we're in now, deregulated, decentralized, liberated, individualistic, or in a situation where there is a kind of community agreement on value, sense making, meaning, duty, responsibility, that most people ain't shit regardless. Which is, in both situations, they are not particularly self-aware. They don't know what they want. They cannot define meaning for themselves outside the community. They look to others too much. They're trying to switch the goalpost or whatever the hell it may be. But in this market, as a matter of fact, it is more visible because people are now more or less left on their own. You can't just hide in the community anymore and say, well, at least I'm in this community following the rules. But it's just like a little side quest of mine, just thinking like, oh yeah, it does expose the average individual to be kind of it does actually just kind of show the need for this community thing, community values and such, and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. If you don't want everything to burn, that is right. So, right. Dr. K, you were saying a few things, and I'm sure that you want to kind of add more to this in terms of this context of winning, the breaking into different groups. You were talking about incels and volcels, whom you kind of cannot respect, and so on. Any more comments in that vein?
Right. So I actually think true incels are very few, right? These are the ugly mother effers or people who are so socially, autistic on the spectrum that they literally can't understand the modern dance game, right? They relied previously to get married due to society, culture, creating that environment. So true incels, I can respect them, right? They're just being dealt a bad card. And the only issue though, the people I can't respect is volcels, people from the MGTOW community. Now let me explain. Let me explain before all the manosphere people come up and say, he an agent of black feminist, but black male feminist, sorry. The thing I can't respect volcels is that, are you really removing yourself from the market because you can't win in the market, or you're removing yourself from the market because of, like I said, that's a meta spiritual reason? If it's meta spiritual, hey, great. But if it's just because you can't access the market at the regular price inflations that you want, then you're a loser at that point, because you're not rejecting the market because the market isn't good for you. You're rejecting it because you can't cap the market.
All I really hear though is
there is someone else though.
Standard kind of
right. But there's one more person who's winning.
Wait, hold on one second. Before you go to that one more person who's winning, I want to make sure that at least we have some signposts here for everyone that we understand the conversation here. Because if we just look at the bell curve, right, we've already agreed that the people whom are not average on the right side, where the right side is good, right, they have quote unquote the intelligence, resources, and as Dr. Thunder likes to talk about, the leverage and the willingness to use it. Okay, I was going to add the leverage aspect to the poll, but only let you put so many words. But they have the leverage, they have the willingness to use it, they know how to use their leverage, those people will win. And then you're talking about the actual incels on the left side where, ugly MFers, as you say, okay, cool, that's fine. And you're just going on this full-on assault of the middle, right? Unless you want to talk about, you want to discriminate the middle, right. Now about whom is winning in the middle. So go ahead.
Right. Yeah, so let me continue my barrage on the people in the middle. Right now, we live in globalism, right? That means you can actually, what's that word? When you can artificially inflate the market. That's where the passport bros come in. So if you still want to have a certain experience with a certain flavor, don't say I'm becoming volcel, monk mode, I'm building on myself. Great, build on yourself. But if you do want that, you truly want it, right? And this is how you know if someone wants something. If that plate of hot piece of peace leaf is presented on your table right now, are you going to reject it or not? If you're going to reject it, and it's free, again, it's free. If you reject it, fair enough, you're a true volcel by spirituality. But I do not think 90% of these volcels in the middle are doing it for spiritual reasons. If that piping hot piece of peace leaf is right there on their table with a knife and fork, and it's free and it's ready to mingle, there's no way they're going to say no, 90% of them. So those people, I can't respect that. Those people should be figuring out how to game the market and win in the market. Get a passport, go and exploit your $2 paycheck, right? And watch my video, $2 host in Nairobi.
Anyways, I see you're over here to pump up your new channel, Dr. K. Don't think we don't know this, but I think that, let me repeat what again, just the bell curve stuff. People on the right side, they're doing well. They got the skills, intelligence, resources, and the ability to leverage, so they can move in spaces that are transactional, right? Because another way to talk about it, I talk about collective versus individualistic now. Another way to look at it is things are more transactional now as opposed to before. Okay. Now you're saying that the people in the middle, okay, that Passport Bros apparently is one good, group in the middle, that they're winning. They're at least taking action. But there's a lot of virtue signaling is what I would be speaking against, right? In that middle, people whom cannot get peace leave, but they're acting like monks all of a sudden, okay? Like all these holy men,
right, exactly.
Holy men have materialized all of a sudden, but
they found their faith.
Virtue signaling,
right? They found their faith. It's like,
I don't know. What do you have to say about that, Dr. Thunder? Because it's number one, it's not a big deal talking about people virtue signaling. It's not particularly material or germane to how whatever, right? It's just virtue signaling. But what do you have to say about that? The virtue signaling of the people in the middle that are not really incels, ugly, whatever, and they're not taking action. And indeed, it's not like they would not reject that peace leave that mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, if you have taken on a moniker because it's better than calling yourself an incel, but really you're an incel, then yeah, I obviously that's the case. And I would argue that it's a very small percentage of people that are actually abstinent by choice, right? There's a very small percentage of people that actually do that. And the sort of priesthood, monasteries and the like are filled with that type of person, right? But they're not regular members of society. Monasteries are not, that's not regular society, right? So the idea of being abstinent in general society, that's a very different idea than doing so because it's a requirement of a vocation, right? It's a different sort of thing. You'd have to have a really powerful personal reason for doing that, and I just don't see that. I don't see that in any significant. I don't see that in any significant way. Anytime you talk about abstinence, for instance, on my show, like I said, the Thunder's Thoughts this past Thursday with Edward Anderson, that whole, every time, I was kind of like doubling back to the abstinence thing and just look at the chat. Oh, abstinence, that's not realistic. Oh, you can't do that in the real world. And people don't even think that it's almost like talking about Bigfoot or something. Oh, there's really people that are that are doing that. Oh, I didn't think that was a real thing. And it's amazing that it wasn't that many years ago that actually was more common than not.
Yeah, it was a whole argument about teaching this was a school argument, abstinence versus sex, whatever, in sex education, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, it was one of the articles that we took a look at, and this article was looking at the Philippines in the 90s, and it was detailing how many virgins that there were, people that were, never had any, and it was something like 80% of the women, and this is in the 90s. Now, granted, it's in the Philippines, but the Philippines is still in the West, right? I mean, they at least have a lot of the same sort of what am I trying to say? A lot of the same modernity impacts of modernity and feminism, stuff like that. But it's a Catholic country, and so that whole the leadership in the country and stuff, they all with regularity, even to this day, talk about abstinence as being a real thing, and because of that, you have more people that embrace abstinence as a viable option. To the point where such a small percentage of even college-aged kids have ever even had any activity. And most of the people that had the sexual experience were the guys. And that's more of the natural order of things, would be for the guys to have experience before the girls. Not the other way around. Not what it is that we have now. That is abnormal. I mean, for all of the evolutionary reasons, for all the, the reasons of, ensuring that the baby is actually yours. I mean, we know that 30% of the paternity tests, 30%, you are not the father. 30%, so yeah, so it's messed up.
LAR, we got a comment on the chat. It says, hey, how come it's so many? How come it's always, or I don't know what, I can't actually read it right now. Okay. But it's there on the screen about Black men and their overrepresentation, Black women also, and their overrepresentation in the talking about relationships. So beginning with LAR and then Dr. K. One way to steel man it, one way to make it not seem like a preoccupation and in simpish behavior is to say what Dr. Thunder said earlier, that, hey, if one is going to look at the changes that are occurring in modernity, which are quite unprecedented and rather recent, right? And if you're doing this kind of social commentary, that looking at the Black community is a place where you're going to find tip of the spear type impacts, effects, indicators of the changes, right? Hence, that's where the fire is, that's where the smoke is, that's why it's going on. Okay, but what are your thoughts about this, the sentiment expressed in this question here, that there's an overemphasis on talking about relationships, blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, one way to say it's a good thing is because, hey, there's chaos in there. But what are your thoughts?
I think it's funny because America is disingenuous. White guys talk about relationships as much as Black men do, but they're white, so guess what? Nobody bats an eye. So when white guys talk about it, it's just, hey, something that white people talk about. When Black people talk about it, it's Asians don't talk about it, and Hispanics don't necessarily talk about it. But guess what? They deal with it and they just play like it doesn't exist. But a lot of the times their epidemic of relationship issues are actually worse than whites and Blacks. Because who dates out the most? Asian women. Who comes, how can I put this? Who's probably second now is Latino or Hispanic women. So guess what? These issues affect other people. It's just when we talk about them, it's just anything. And I hate to sound, hotepish, but it doesn't really matter what we talk about as Black people, because it's always going to get a question. We can talk about science. Just because you're not listening, because y'all not supposed to talk about science, that becomes an issue. So I get it, but at the same time, it's to me it's always disingenuous, because if we want to be completely honest, we talk about a wide spectrum of things. It's just people only show up for a few things.
That is true. I can picture I can very much picture a different stream going on right now where there's half the people in the chat.
Yeah, that's true.
We're not talking
That's right.
about this. If people show up to relationship chats to talk about why people are always talking
And that's you.
shout out to Coach. Yes, that's you indeed. But so
That's right.
LAR's point is that this is a red herring. But let's shift it a little bit. And let's talk about, let's say it were true that there is a, that the Black manosphere just goes on and on. Is the deepest in this stuff, right? Like Black people get really, really deep with it. One aspect of it, also another kind of steel manning of it, and then I want you to talk about what may be negative about it, Dr. K. A steel manning of it is that in the Black manosphere, if you will, is where you actually have the most context, right? Where you can have people like Edward Anderson going super deep, and I'm not just using him as an example of like the kinds of things that we deal here, where there's a lot of granularity and context, generational differences, color, slight, where we talk about colorism and this and that. There's a lot of quote unquote intersectionality that goes on in the Black manosphere, where every minute detail is kind of gone through. So from someone who's a sociologist or archaeologist or whatever, just wanted to mine information, you're going to find more detailed information here than with Rollo Tomasi and the rest of them.
Yeah, let me give a context here. And I think the brother Spiritual Logic actually makes a really great point. The issue, though, if we start talking about relationships, it's going to turn into a simp channel, and we don't want that, right? Because the moment you start going down to their level, you're dealing with, it's power dynamics. You're going to be in simp realm. We're not going to do that, right? It's like, no. But I understand. I agree with you 100%. We talk about sex and not relationships, but yeah, we can't talk about relationship. We'll become simps. But I want to give context here. There was this guy. His name was Joshua. I'm not going to say his second name. He's a Nigerian brother. We grew up with him in the UK. He kind of came in a bit later than me. He came in when he was like maybe 14. He grew up in the UK. We used to be part of the same Afro-Christian fellowship thing where in the city that we lived in. The funny thing is, this brother was a very good guy. He's your typical, intelligent brother. He went into the college, got his certifications, then got himself into the university, got his papers. He was sort of the goody two-shoe, became the leader of the Christian fellowship. No woman, 0 Black women wanted to date him. In fact, the guy's not even ugly or anything like that. He's a decent looking guy, but nobody wanted him at all. 0. When I say 0, I'm talking about 0. But guess what? This brother did is I checked out his Instagram page the other day. He's got married to a beautiful Nigerian sister from Nigeria, and he's gonna probably have a great marriage from that sister from Nigeria. So there is an element of modernity. I think honestly sometimes it's pointless talking about fixing relationship between men and women from the Western perspective. This is why I say the people winning is that guy. Instead of becoming an incel saying I can't get a woman, I don't suit what modern women are looking for. He went and found a woman from Nigeria, where he's natively from. Look, I don't know if his relationship's going to be successful, but from the people that I've seen from his age range, he seems happy. And this is the same thing all my friends we grew up in. The Kenyans, all of them went back to Kenya or Ethiopia or Nigeria to get married. None of them, and I'm saying 0 of them married.
I heard Dr. Thunder say before that if he wasn't married and if he was in the dating market these days, right, that he'll travel out a little bit.
Right. There's a really good point here.
Like a mug.
Right. But Dr. Thunder and Ike and LAR, there's a really strong point here is that when you're looking for a woman from one of these cultures, there is an expectation from both sides. It is, you're going into a structured system. When you're looking for a woman in the Western perspective, there's so many things that's going on, right? There is the ones who want this, the ones who want that. There isn't like a real sort of,
individualistic means right, more variation, means more transactional. Things are scattered, don't know what the hell is. Yeah, well,
exactly. And also the familial structure. This woman's family is going to be expecting that relationship to work for various different reasons, right? So maybe she brings them over after 10 years, etc. So there is a lot of canvas mechanics happening. And I think, trying to resolve something from a Western perspective, if I was someone from the West, I wouldn't even try it. It's literally pointless. Now you can get lucky. You can meet the right people, right? But if you imagine you're this Joshua guy, you're a good guy, you're typically a simp, as what they'll call you a simp. Are you going to change your way, learning games so that you can, outmaneuver other people, change your personality, stop being a godly, fearing man? No, you go in Nigeria, you find a nice, beautiful Nigerian woman, way more beautiful than the ladies anyone could even find in the UK, and you live happily ever after.
Well, Winston has some beef with you. You guys can take it up in the chat about how dare you? You're already a simp. You're a total 100% simp. You're a walking contradiction and whatever. Seems like you guys have some history. You guys can resolve that. But shout out to Spiritual Logic. Let's get a little sound effect there, Dr. Thunder, for the super chat. Yes. Says for the interesting convo. Salute, brothers. $10. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, follow suit. We have a new panelist, Lion Legal. I think he's some kind of Nigerian. Let me ask you a question, Lion Legal. First of all, how's your audio? Can we check microphone?
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Excellent. So we're good. You're the first. I want to just ask you to kind of comment on: is there any worthwhileness to talking about winning and losing? Is there any worthwhileness, even if you go down to the more granular level? Like, yes, we're looking at the chessboard and analyzing the game theoretic landscape and seeing how we may play. Is there any worthwhileness to this particular conversation, or is it just a simple thing of things are deregulated, more individualistic, level up, get a passport, use your leverage, and the world is going to hell anyways? What do you have to say about that?
Is there any benefit of having this particular conversation? No.
Yeah. Yes, more or less.
No, there isn't. And I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
Because it's a game you can't win, and a lot of young men can't see this until it's too late, because they focus a lot of their energy on trying to impress people. Human beings are very complicated, fickle, erratic creatures. So even if you do everything in your power to please another human being, they can still cheat on you. They can still say that they don't want to date you. They can still ignore you and even get aggravated or angry by the fact that you're trying to please them. So you cannot put all of your efforts into trying to please someone else. Instead, if you're going to advise young Black kids especially, I would advise them, focus on your career, focus on being successful. Don't focus on dating. Dating comes after all of that, because it's easy to date once you're successful. It's very difficult to become successful if you've left school by the wayside, you've left the college, university opportunities, you've left all of that. And then at the very end, after you now get skills, you now date, etc., you might have a kid and you may want to send your kid to private school. You don't have the money for that. You may have a girlfriend and think that she'll always be there for you. Then she breaks up with you. Then what happens? So dating is not actually the first thing to figure out. I think occupation, career, and purpose in life. Purpose in life is actually the most important thing.
Let me push back on you once. It's not really a pushback. It's okay. You know the chessboard, though, right? In other words, is what you're saying that, okay, it is fine to at least know the chessboard, because I know you're in these spaces, you look at things, you're talking about, oh, what's the marketplace, what are the means of transacting in this marketplace, but not to dwell on it? Is that what you're saying? Because you're not saying ignore it and just go put your head in books and stuff.
Of course, you have to be cognizant of what you're dealing with, because the unfortunate thing is that you get a lot of people who are highly intelligent, intellectually astute, and they build tech companies, they do this, they do that, but they still get played in the dating game because they don't understand human psychology and they don't understand people. You cannot be a dummy. Unfortunately, as a Black person, you don't get the luxury of being dumb in this world, because this, especially if you live in the West, this world can be very wicked, very wicked. So you have to be intelligent if you want to make anything of your life. You don't even have a choice in that instance.
Be sober, be vigilant, for your adversary the devil walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour.
Well, I don't know if the devil is a lion. In the Bible, I thought the devil was a snake, but okay.
No, that's just, that's a scripture out of the Bible.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, as a roaring lion, not that he is a roaring lion.
Right.
It's just a metaphor.
Yeah. So like, definitely you need to understand. But let me tell you where people fall by the wayside. When you were growing up, Ike, Dr. Thunder, I think this may be a little bit after your time, but like, in the 90s, there was a pickup artist generation. Like, a lot of these guys that were writing about
yeah.
games, this, that.
Mm.
Oh yeah, of course.
If you look into the background of these
Roosh
people,
V.
if you look into the background of these people, a lot of them don't have two pennies to rub together. It's so pathetic, dude. It's so pathetic. These guys are not multimillionaires. They haven't started any business. Even now, they can't tell you what stock to invest in. They have nothing to offer you. And a lot of what they say is a lie. Go up to a girl, spin around 3 times, jump on your head in a circle, sacrifice a chicken, and then you'll get a girlfriend. It's like, dude, it doesn't even make any sense. What are they talking about? They just they're just selling you a product because people are
Actually,
very
the
desperate.
the sacrificing the chicken part, that might actually be more effective than most of the stuff that gets suggested, because that could actually be tapping into something spiritual.
No,
Yeah,
no.
there
You
you
know.
go.
Okay, like
But
the essentially, overall, what I'm saying is that if you understand the psychology behind hypergamy, behind dating, behind what causes divorce, absolutely, information is
I
key.
agree.
Knowledge will set you free. Understand the psychology, but
I agree.
if you want to now think that, like, pickup work is a waste of time and a waste of life. It's a
Mm.
complete and utter
Well,
waste.
I would
Okay,
say,
Dr. K, it seems like you want to say something. And
yeah.
also, just on the thing on pickup, I just want to kind of punch that idea on pickup, because it is not because people get into a philosophical conversation about game, no game, pickup, this, that, and the other. It's not about that. It's that when you sell a product, right, you have to have some kind of basic kind of demonstration, right? In other words, the transferability of game tends to be the issue, the selling of it, as opposed to, oh, here's Don Juan, and I'm just studying and admiring Don Juan. But when Don Juan says, I can teach you how to be me, okay, and I can make it happen and pay me this fee, that's when Don Juan has to have these studies, has to have these videos, which you never see, right? In the quote unquote,
Right.
pickup space. Videos of, over and over again to give you actual percentages. This is how it works. In other words, real life experimentation, rubber meets the road, skin in the game, basic stuff that we understand. So it's not a philosophical conversation. It's just when you start selling products, the onus is on you to prove it. But anyways, go ahead, Dr. K.
Right now, the whole game situation, I don't want to be too abstract here, but it reminds me of when I used to play basketball. And my friends, the same friend actually, we used to go, we call it gash hunting, right? Basically looking for women, picking up on women on the streets. We did this every day. We did all other stuff, played basketball, etc. every day. But right, when we went basketball, I used to win, I would say 65% of the time. He would win the other percentage. What I noticed is something. He was like, "No, Dr. K, you're not shooting the basketball the right way. You have to put your hand like this in this angle, the 45 degrees." I was like, it's working for me. It's actually working better than it is working for you. So no, same thing. He came in, he gave me this book, The Game, by I forgot the author. Right, this was a long
Neil
time ago.
Strauss.
Right, and I
Neil
was like,
Strauss.
I don't want to read your book.
Throw that book in the
Right, he was
bin,
like,
please.
right. So I never read it, right? But the guy was like, "Oh, you have to do this, and I'm like, "Bro, I'm using my own psychological game. It's transtemporal. Maybe I can't pick up women like you on the street, fine, but I can maintain them. After 1 week, they get bored of talking to you. For me, I had a transtemporal 3-month game. I got it, and it worked for me 100% of the time. So the point is, right? I learned psychology. I learned what people want in general, the nuances of maintaining play, right? Because that's all it is, right? Game from a psychological perspective, you can't lose because you're literally seeing what a human being wants. You create that dynamic between you two. Jordan Peterson talks about the big rat, small rat. If you can't do that, if you can't engage a human across time, you're not going to get that human to maintain that. And I think a lot of men, unfortunately, don't understand human psychology. And of course, this is how they get trapped into these crevices.
I will also say this, like the issue of dating, which I think people have to be cognizant of, is that obviously we are all black people. A lot of people from Africa have had to now go abroad to earn, like, like a living in different places. Of course, if you're in a place whereby there's a lot of discrimination, you stand out, etc. People have a intrinsic negative response to you. Is that going to be the best place to date? Obviously not. Obviously, so as far as the, like, people saying that you should travel, etc. Of course, you need to know where you are. If you're in a big metropolitan city in the West, is that going to be easier than being in a small town where you stick out? Obviously, yes. But that is not the same thing as saying, okay, go and say these lines, go and pretend like you're rich or pretend like you've got value that you don't have. That's a different thing. That
passport is greater than game.
Okay.
That's my equation. Passport is greater than game.
Because earlier, one thing that we said was that, in terms of the whole landscape, right? Because passport is literally getting in a plane and going to a different landscape with different quote unquote game, if game is now animals to hunt, right? Or different density of game, different type of apples that you may like, as opposed to doing some magical incantations, chicken sacrifices that's going to turn the green apples in your homeland into red apples. Why not fly to the land of red apples, right? So it's just superior in that sense, right? But
use leverage. Use your leverage. One thing that is frustrating about some of these conversations where people are like, "Oh, you're just going over and trying to take advantage of barefoot, impoverished women and like this." And it's like, dude, I mean, if you have the resources to be able to go somewhere else and use your leverage in your better circumstance to be a natural attraction to someone that doesn't necessarily have the same access, I don't understand what the problem is. And I don't understand how that is a losing deal for the for the person, for the other person. It seems like they'd be winning in that scenario. Now that is obviously downstream, you'd have to be concerned that maybe the person is going to take advantage of you. And so you need to have a way to sort of safeguard and to vet whoever it is that you're talking about. And there's ways to do that. Right. And, but even if people are going, they're getting their passport and they're doing whatever they're doing, it's their right to do whatever they're doing. Right. Now, I don't condone some of the behavior that is, that I know that I'm sure that is going on. I don't necessarily condone that. However, using your leverage, I don't see the issue with that. I did want to make this one point about the simping business. So I had a gig last night. It was in another town. It was a healthy amount of driving to and from, and somebody was mentioning the movie Somewhere in Time. Somewhere in Time was the movie that was released in 1980. Patrick Reeves is the star of that movie, and it has a really strange sort of premise where he's a middle-aged guy, and this old woman grabs his hand and says, "Come back to me." And so then he starts to research all this stuff, and then he figures out some kind of way to time travel. And so he just got to get clothing on that's of a particular time period. And then he can't have anything from present day, right? He's got to have only stuff from that time period. So then he figures out how to time travel. He time travels. He gets back to this old woman that she said, "Come back to me." So he goes back to the old woman. So then they're in love and everything is great and all like this. And then what ends up happening is he reaches in his pocket and there's a penny that was from his actual time. And then instantaneously he gets sucked back in the future. And then he falls into this dark, deep depression, and he won't eat, and he just, he dies. And then after he dies, then it's like the cameras pan up to the sky, and you can see they're back together now, somewhere in time, right? And I remember that movie. I watched that movie several times because it has a sort of haunting kind of a vibe to the movie, and it's interesting because it takes place in Mackinac Island, where I grew up in Michigan, in the Grand Hotel there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But as an adult, thinking about this movie and thinking about the fact that this guy was willing to throw the rest of his life away because of this, it's the height of simping. It's the height of gumping, of not valuing yourself at all. You only have value because of this other person, worshiping someone else to the extent that if they disappeared from your life, you've refused to eat now and die because of it. This oh my goodness. As I think about a lot of that kind of messaging that we see, that causes men. Well, first of all, I mean, men don't have the same access to women as women have to men. We know that, right? It takes an exceptional man to get the kind of woman that he wants, right? But it takes, just a kind of an average, any kind of woman to pretty much get the kind of man that she wants. That's pretty much the way that this thing is set up. But this is just too far, and unfortunately, that is the common narrative. And that's a loser. That is a loser.
You see,
yeah. I just want to piggyback off that. Essentially, we're not going to live forever, I'm assuming. And when people now pass on into the next life and they see how much time they spent focusing on dating and like trying to get, they'll cry. They'll cry and think, I wasted my life or wasted so much time on absolute and utter nonsense. And it's been said before that hell is dying and seeing the man you are compared to the man you could have been.
Mhm.
People should not make this mistake of focusing on the wrong thing so that they don't reach the standard.
But let me ask you, Dan Legal, don't you like refresh? Don't you like refresh your who you are? For example, I don't regret anything because even when I do stupid things, because every week I reanalyze myself. Am I moving towards the goal that I want, or am I being a dusty? And if I'm being a dusty, I accept it and I take it on and be like, okay, nice, I'm dusty, I enjoy this moment, but I don't try to remain in the same position. So I'm always constantly reevaluating, or rather evaluating everything. So I wouldn't be in that situation, I think, because I could be this guy. I focus on peace leave once in my life. I don't regret it because, right, I think it's what Dr. Thano was trying to say earlier. Well, I want to add on to it because he made some really great salient points. And also he's kind of defined who's losing, 100%. The nigga that gets depressed, that was me actually once. That's why it's such a salient point. I was in love with a Ghanaian hot piece of peace leave, athletic body type, my perfect body type, dark skin, round head, all that great stuff from Ghana. And this is when I was in the UK. We knew each other. I was that simp, man, calling each other 4 hours a day. There was a God complex going on there. And I think that's what Dr. Thana was talking about, right? There was a false idol. I was her false idol, right? She needed me for everything, right? Like, hey, I need advice for this. Which course should I do? Help me out on my law final year exam, etc. I liked to be needed, right? And I do, because again, I liked that God concept, right? I liked feeling like a God. And also I was worshiping the feminine. I was worshiping that, that connection that I simply made with a human being to a point whereby when it ended, I was that useless loser in bed for a couple of weeks. Again, I wasn't moping. I was just feeling it, right? Now, I don't regret this because what it did allow me is to obviously rise from the ashes and become the phoenix, monkey devil breakfast extraordinaire. But the point is, the loser is that guy stuck there because it's not in his will to be stuck there. And I think, Dr. Thana, you made a really, really great point there. And also the whole creating false idols. Men
let's acknowledge
pedestalize
MOT
women.
Super Chat. Dr. Thana, if you don't mind giving us real quick
Yeah.
sound effect.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Man of
thank you
Tomorrow
very much.
says it is a guide to create men codependent upon women, the wrong type of woman, refuge in the mouth of a lion.
Yeah. So, let me unpack what he said. First of all, he's saying it with regards to game. So game, which by the way is related to what Lion Legal just said, is a waste of your time if you focus on that. He's saying that game basically is a way of giving the woman what they want. Now,
That's right.
when you hear that, for some people it might sound a little bit, shall we say, counterintuitive. Like, what do you mean game is giving the woman what she wants? I'm actually out here trying to get what I
Wait,
want.
first define game, right? Because there's what I mentioned also
Oh,
psychological game. I
we're
think
not
that's
we're not
exactly
gonna
what you
do
mean.
big level
We
game
need that.
theoretic versus when we're in these
Right.
spaces. We know game is about
Our
the
brain stops
I got
working.
swag. I go in
right?
here and I say this and I spit like, oh yeah,
Wait,
damn girl, all
hold
that
up,
shit.
hold
You're
up,
trying to
though.
say that the
No,
black
I
man's
think this
brain
is
stops working?
one second.
Yeah,
One second. I think this is a valid distinction though, because we have used the term game in different ways, right? We've used game to mean sort of like understanding basic human psychology, but then we've used game to mean the sort of general game that we're playing, like as in how does this dating market have an impact on the community, as in everybody's losing, right, in the modern game, as it were, right? But then we also use it to talk about basically pickup lines.
Yeah.
So if we're talking, so which kind of game are we talking about?
Pickup
I
lines.
think that is valid.
Pickup
Okay.
lines, and it's particularly relevant to what game Man of Tomorrow is saying here, because pickup lines, someone may think of it as, okay, I am getting what I want. What does it mean to be giving the woman what she wants? But the pickup line is a total kind of reducing your entire essence, right, of who you are as a man, who should be high up in the clouds somewhere. Bring yourself down to say stupid shit like, oh, this, that, like basically boosting her ego, right? You're bringing yourself all the way down to make her feel like something. And it's like, that is the complete opposite. Like, I don't even have to give rational arguments to that. It is very my blood as a male boils when just noticing that everything about that is wrong. Anyways, go ahead, Line Legal. Quick comment because we got to go to LAR.
I thought like actual pickup was actually saying the opposite. Was actually bringing people down to make them insecure. But like
negging is an aspect, but it's still all. If you're playing games with a woman, you're a bitch.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Okay,
it's terrible.
good.
Like
Yeah, it's good to differentiate that.
Just a second. Like the last thing I'll say is I forgot your name. I don't know, like the professor dude that asked me.
Okay.
Yes. Like the thing that you said.
That's Noob Saibot.
You stated that it's good to have the experience of like being depressed over a girl, etc. But there is something that you said in that statement. You said that I was able to overcome that and it helped me. So you are actually talking about the singular. You are talking about what could be a specific instance, anomaly, rather than most people that go through that. The fact of the matter is that since things like game and pickup are so popular, there's a vast majority of people that have not been able to overcome that mindset and are still stuck in the mindset where they simp, effectively. So that's why I'm saying that they have to break that mindset and focus on other things in life, because it's not going to help them ultimately. And I think that's the last point I'll say, because I have to hop up. But it's been great seeing you all. Thank you.
Indeed,
Thanks.
likewise. So LAR, okay, you've been quiet the past couple rounds here. Perhaps you can start commenting on this game thing, right? Which is basically the idea of this game in terms of pickup line and in terms of going around manipulating the woman's feelings, typically boosting her ego one way, even though negging is another one. But that basically it's you just kind of packaging yourself up to deliver yourself to a woman, as opposed to what should be the case where you got a different marathon to run, which is about climbing a particular hierarchy where men are your competitors and you get judged, and then the women are like some sprinkle on the cherry on top of the cake, right? And it's not supposed to be about the cake. Anyways, LAR, that including also the passport bro thing that Dr. Thunder said, What are your thoughts on these?
Game is rooted in dishonesty. And the first person you're dishonest with is with yourself. Most times, people who run game, they're faking like they're somebody they're not to impress somebody who's faking like they're somebody they're not, in hopes to have sex with them so they both can create this double dumb fantasy. It's easier to be who you authentically are, but unfortunately, the vast majority of people on the planet are actually afraid to be themselves. That's why game is so prevalent, because people are for the most part cowardly. They can't be themselves because they don't think themselves are good enough. So what do? You create a caricature of yourself using game. What do you think these ladies are doing? Creating caricatures of themselves to make you feel more confident, to make you look more confident, to make you look like you're important, to make you feel like you're important. You're dressing, a lot of people are dressing themselves. The comment, how did Prime say it? And if y'all know who Prime is, Deion Sanders. I don't know where the comment came. Look good, feel good, play good, they pay good, you eat good, you live good. What is that all based on? A false premise that if I look a certain way, I'll feel a certain way, and then I'll actually live up to the hype. But the truth is, you got to put the work in to be the hype. You sell the fantasy to people because most people are too lazy to be what they want to work to become.
Yep.
So, in essence, what winds up happening is you get a bunch of people who congregate to live a lie together and then complain that they're living a lie, which is one of the dumbest things you could do, because you never take responsibility for yourself living a lie. It's always they played you, they finessed you, they hustled you, they weren't real. But truth be told, you weren't either. The passport thing is, you can say it's game and you can say it's a finesse and you can say it's an option. Because the vast majority of people, let's just be honest about how we roll, and we've been rolling in America. You always traveled. Man, you know what? I'm going to move from the South to the East, from the Midwest to the West, from the East to the West. You know, because I need a different thing. I heard these people over here, I want Southern hospitality. These people are mean up here. So let me go down there. So you go somewhere because there's a fantasy in your mind that somewhere is better than where you are. Now it's a different culture. America has different cultures by region. Now it's just, there's a pervasive culture of disrespect that you would rather go out of the country to find considerate people. And you assume that people are more considerate outside of the borders of this country. So that's what people are looking for. But the sex tourism is a fallacy, because we do sex tourism in America all the time.
Yeah.
What do you think spring break is? What do you think the Essence Festival is?
Yep,
what do you
go.
think the Freaknik?
Freaknik.
No, Freaknik is gone.
But what was Freaknik?
Time Joiner Cruises. Right, the Time Joiner Cruise. What do you think that is? What do you think all of these corporate conventions in New Orleans and New York and Las Vegas is? It's sex tourism under the guise of working. What do you think? All-Star Game, Super Bowl. It's the big fights. It's all sex tourism.
Hey, the Schwarzenegger Expo got busted a few years back because they was doing a bunch of underage stuff. Yep. Absolutely. And I heard a really good point in what LAR said, and that's 100% what LAR said. Absolutely. I couldn't say better. But it reminded me of one of these talking points that's circulating the space. Some folks talking about how, you're doing this because you're weak, or you're doing this because you don't have any game. And hey, if you don't have game, the same person you are here, you're going to be the same person over there. Using all this kind of stuff. And it's funny because every activity that men engage in, that single men engage in, and Man of Tomorrow just said church functions. he
Ain't no lie.
All right. I mean, I shouldn't even, man, I feel bad for that. I was just in church this morning. Anyhow, but the thing is there's nothing that a single man does that he's not at least open to entertaining a woman. And that's 100%. So because you get your passport and go somewhere else, why should you be doing that for any other reason other than the possibility of meeting a woman, right? See, so I don't understand what the problem with that is. And I myself, though it didn't require a passport, when I was a junior in high school, I went to a school system that didn't have the kind of women that I was interested in. And so I transferred to a school district that had the kind of women that I was interested in. So I was a passport bro before passport bros was a thing. And so the logic that is used to try to make dudes feel guilty, or to try to shame them into sticking around, it's almost like a lot of these game guys that are using these bogus arguments, it's as if because they feel like they have figured out how to get access to the women that they want to lord that over folks that haven't had that kind of success. And so any pathway that person finds, they try to dog that pathway. And it's just right. It's too bad, because if we're really going to be about black men and supporting black men, that's all.
Makes perfect sense. But
can you highlight Winston's message?
What would you say?
Can you highlight Winston's?
First of all, he had a super chat. Okay, I don't know what that is in dollars. Let's go ahead and acknowledge him.
That's about $1, 80 cents or something.
$1.80. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, he's an iPhone user. I would assume that's why the numbers are like that. Unless he actually typed in 149 in Android. It's possible. But so. In addition to what you may want to say, Dr. K, I want us to kind of close out with this. Ramil says, okay, shout out to Ramil, couldn't be here today, but when he says hoes are winning, okay, I want you to steel man that idea. In other words, I want you to tell me
100%
one or the other, right? Either because, for example, look, we must recall one version of steel manning, which is just let me state the trivial version of hoes is winning, the trivial basic.
Well, do you want the answer, or do you want to tell me what the answer is?
No. I'm just saying that the basic one is that because we already said it. I don't want for you to repeating things we already said. Or you know how I am with there's got to be I keep track of what's been said. Right now, we know that it is a question of individualistic, transactional, deregulated landscape. Hence, you already identified people on the right tail who are going to win. Okay. There's holes in the right tail too, don't they? Okay, right tail people who are skilled. They're not just all angels. Okay, so one basic steel manning of what Ramil will point out is like, hey, we got some right tail above average. In other words, in terms of intelligence, resources, knowing their leverage, holes out there that are winning. Okay, so other than that,
let me steel man explain.
Expand on that. What exactly is Ramil's
simple
steel man that, if you will? Go ahead.
Yeah, simple. Then I'll expand it. I'll give I'll give the prime cut of meat, then I'll generalize to the other dusty cuts of meat. Simple, right? Cosmopolitans are winning in life. What is a cosmopolitan? It's someone who's born in Mauritius Islands, talking about one of the UK ministers right now. She's an Indian woman. Her grandparents came from India, then they went to Mauritius Islands, then they went to Kenya, and then went to the UK. You simply follow the money. You're not you're a hoe, as in you're willing to sell your skills and your abilities, and you're able to look at the market and then give the market what you want. You're not going to tell, oh, I'm just from the UK. I'm only stuck in working in the UK. No, I'm going to go work wherever the money and the bigger, better deal. That's what a hoe is. A hoe is always looking for the BBD, bigger, better deal. And the hoe is both the man and the woman. So yeah, that's what a hoe is. And that's why hoes are winning. The people that are willing to go and move to get the BBD. That's it. And that's like why men in general make more money than women, because men are willing to work anywhere relative to women who want to work. They grew up in this town. They want a job in that specific area where the parents is here. And when you're restricted, when you have these cultural artifacts that hold you back into that specific region. Oh, I'm a black man from Louisiana. This is my culture. And you're not willing to expand and hold yourself out, figuratively speaking, you can't be winning.
Okay, good. So you've and I assume you can let those stand as your last words here, talking about the cosmopolitan, that whom has the most degrees of freedom will win. Just in a different way, again, of restating the point that I made, or restating the point about individuals on the right tail will win. Now, LAR, when Ramil says hoes is winning, what is the truth in what he is saying? Or if I don't know, I've ever heard him elaborate upon that argument.
Yeah, I've heard it, but I'm not like they win in sex. They've always won at sex. That's not a, for me, it's like, oh, hoes is winning. People, they've been trading their box for money. They say, what is the oldest profession in the world? Prostitution. So if you're willing to sell yourself, people are willing to buy you. But if you look at people who really sell themselves, winning is a short season. Because what winds up happening with most people who sell themselves, they spend years after they can't sell themselves anymore trying to fix the broken pieces. And a good amount of them wind up going broke trying to fix the broken pieces. So it's like, yeah, everybody wins. What is the old statement? A broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah. So, they might have won a quarter of the days. But let's just be honest. It's like basketball. If you got an 82 game season and you win a quarter of your games and you won by 20, you're still a loser. Because you only won a quarter of the games. It just was impressive when you won. Did you make the playoffs? No. You may or may not have any All-Stars. And guess what? You're never going to win big. So everybody wins. I mean, I was about to be trifling, so I'm going to say it in the right. You know what? If you're looking for sex, your hand wins more than your body does nowadays. So your hand can be considered a winner.
Well, there you go. Dr. Thunder, you're going to get the final word, okay? And also let us know if you got anything interesting coming up on Thunder's Thoughts on Thursday, some point in Eastern time. It happens.
I do have a show planned on Thursday. I haven't confirmed the co-host, but it's going to be a great co-host. It's going to be on the sort of SYSBM divester sort of topic. In the question I'm going to be asking is, SYSBM really the same as divesting or divestors?
Gotcha.
So that's going to be the topic. Now, this is something occurred to me. One of the reasons I think that the game guys are sort of lined up against the passport bros is because of what MOT just said. Game is giving women what they want. The game guys are actually the allies of the women that can be gamed. Right? So since women, even the ones that say that they, that won't even give, a hard working black man the time of day, and their sort of position seems to be, I don't want you, but they can't have you either. That is the same basic position that the game guys are taking, right? The game guys are, as I said, they understand the game, they play the game, maybe they excel at the game, and perhaps extracting resources from those that don't understand the game as a way to continue. That's part of the equation, but I think it's more fundamental than just that they're losing money because cats are getting their passports. I think more of it is that from a philosophical perspective, because game is seeking to give the gamed what they want. It's putting yourself down into and impersonating what is believed that the opposite sex wants, right? And so since they appear to be the ally of the gamed, then obviously the gamed, in this sense, women, they would be both against passport bros. So that's something that occurred to me as we were talking about this as a sort of side issue. And then as far as who's winning, I think that the answer to that question is, if I'm to answer the question, are hoes winning? Yes and no. So perhaps they are winning now, but as time goes on, they will be losing. Because if you take what happens to your legacy as part of if you are winning or losing, the further destruction to the community, the further destruction and sort of embracing of generational curses, all of that stuff, your future selves, as it were, your offspring, will be paying the price. And they will get quickly to a point when they don't know any better. They honestly don't know any better. Now I think people do know better. But I think it will actually get to a place when people actually don't know any better. And that's a loser. That's a loser.
Well put. Okay, so you're adding the future, and the consequences, moving it into the future, moving it into the community. We already did say that most people, on average, will need to take their cues, their meaning, their happiness, their sense making from the community. So if you are some kind of an outlier and you're winning, maybe you're not such an outlier, but you're winning for a particular period of time, but still the effects that you're creating is a future generation that is going to be rudderless, without any guidance, because of the kinds of things that you have instituted. That's a fair way to put it there. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to a close. It kind of ran through rather quickly. Speaking of ran through, I thought we were going to take some. Yeah, I didn't realize that we were already past the hour and a half mark. Okay, but again, ladies and gentlemen, the idea is things are more transactional now. Things are more deregulated. Things are more decentralized, and therefore individualistic. Hence, community is one thing that loses. In other words, community sense making, community morals, perhaps even such things as duty, family, and so on and so forth. Who will win offhand when things become individualistic? Well, the people whom are on the right tail, exceptional individuals, are not going to be the ones that are most affected. People mostly in the middle will be definitely heavily affected. And as a result, posterity, in other words, the future of average people, is not going to be looking very good at the end of the day. But ultimately, as a man, it's a question of, it's not a very difficult, don't stand at that door too long to talk about what Lion Legal was saying. Stand at that door too long, scratching your head with regards to what exactly this chess piece is. Like, okay, once you figure it out, it's a question, what are you now going to do? What is the leverage that I have? Is it a passport? Is it this, that, XYZ, whatever? Is it monk mode of a real, whatever it is? In other words, truth, and identify with the actual truth and yourself. Don't lie to yourself or lie to others, either using game or being a fake monk mode person when you're truly an incel, right? That is at the end of the day, the reason for having this kind of conversation, as Dr. Thunder said earlier, to better understand the nature of things. And then with that, I want to thank the super chatters and those of you in the chat. Much appreciated. Super chatters, not doctor, but Man of Tomorrow. Man of Tomorrow hit us with some good stuff. Spiritual Logic hit us with some good stuff. And also Winston Bartholomew hit us with some good stuff, including exposing Dr. K's inceldom. And then Dr. had to come clean about how he was struck down for 2 weeks being a total simp. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on Wednesday, catch me and Dr. Thunder on Case Closed. No, not Case Closed. We'll be getting this done, something like that. And yeah, that is sometime on this channel on Wednesday. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, Case Closed next week on Sunday, Dr. Thunder's channel. And as usual, 4 p.m. Eastern. We're out. Thank you very much.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil's lurking, with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons will breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come fi get it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come fi get it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.